Hello, 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 and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We're talking about Genesis. We've made it to Foxtrot. Yeah, this is, a lot of people say this is the biggie. This is their moment. And half of it is 100%, 110%, in fact, maybe 111%, in fact, their moment. Side 2 of this album, Supper's Ready, I think is, it's the pinnacle. I mean, it was, all bands reach that, they work up, they work up, they work up, and they hit that moment of absolute achievement. And I guess you could say this is their first one. Is on this. As an album, though, it's not my favorite. To be totally honest, I like pretty much all of the songs on it. But and I think of and I mean obviously it is a classic Genesis album, but I think there's better ones in there. Like I said, I still really like it. Obviously, this is the second album by the classic lineup with Peter Gabriel, Mike Rutherford, Tony Banks, Steve Hackett, and Phil Collins. So the band is certainly gelled as players on one thing, and possibly as writers. That's the famous thing with Genesis, is there's basically just too many writers in the band. They started out as a songwriting collective, and they went on to kind of go and play their songs instead of having others play it for them. And as they kind of went along their journey, and they did Trespass and Nursery Crime, and eventually this one. I think they found it quite difficult to, work around their songwriting democracy. And so, you get a little things where, a little snippet from this guy here, a little snippet from this guy here. And then, sometimes one guy would, totally write the song, but then they'd all get kind of credit for it. I mean, it was a good system, and it led to the creation of some wonderful albums, but it wasn't a stable system, and it wasn't one that lasted that long, unfortunately. But this is the moment directly before the peak. I think my personal opinion is I think their peak as a band overall was Selling England by the Pound. I really like that album. I think that's perfect. And then Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is where they went they pushed the envelope just one step beyond. And it's good that they did that, because obviously The Lamb is a classic album, and I really like The Lamb, but I like Selling England that much more. And of course, the stuff they went on to do after that is, while it is something of a different spirit, there's some great stuff in the later catalog as well. But we're talking about Foxtrot today, so I'm going to start out. Show you the album cover. Unfortunately, I don't have a gatefold sleeve. This is an old reissue. It's on the famous Charisma label, as you can see there. Very cool, Stratton Smith and that. But yeah, this seminal album cover. Genesis always had really good album covers. And this is in the live shows. It was around this tour that getting a little wobbly. Oh my! Hopefully that didn't make anyone dizzy. Anyway. For the live shows, Gabriel was starting to do the costumes, and the real famous time was in a boxing ring in Dublin somewhere, and Gabriel comes out wearing his wife's dress with the fox head. And I think that's great. It really gave the band a unique image, and it obviously it turned some heads, and it got people interested in the band, gave them a platform to expand on their success. And then of course there's the back cover. You can kind of see this. I think this illustrates moments in I think the whole album cover illustrates moments in Supper's Ready. It's kind of cool. You get a little background there. You can actually see the album cover of Nursery Crime. You see that in the background. So if you put all these albums together, it kind of expands outward, or at least these two have the album cover connection. I think it's Paul Whitehead that did the album cover. Quite certain. These are things that I should know, but I don't like saying anything for certain on here. The internet is vicious, so everything is probably. Like I said, I'm just chatting. I'm not reviewing. So track 1 of the first side on this, Watcher of the Skies. Now this is definitely a classic from the early period. Really, really great intro. It's kind of a brave intro, really. It's all just Mellotron for like 2 minutes or something like that. But then you hear that tighter playing right off the bat once the rhythm kicks in. You get that. And it's been said a million times. It's a classic song, and it's about aliens, watching over the skies, over onto us silly humans, and he mentions God a couple of times, and it's cool. I think it's Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford that did this one. Lyrics might be a little bit like the lyrics don't really sing well. They kind of bounce a little awkwardly over the rhythm, but again, it's experimental. They're doing that progressive thing, and they're experimenting with these weird kind of arrangements, and the weird arrangement of words over top of the already weird arrangements makes for something new, and that's what that period was all about. They were all looking to create something new. Yeah, it's a classic song, and it's a great opener. The Musical Box, when I saw them do Selling England, they open with Watcher of the Skies, and you see the bat wings, and brilliant opener, just a brilliant opener. It's that steady rise to awesomeness. Really good stuff. And then, of course, the real dynamic bit, that's another classic moment. So good. Great song. Track 2, we get Timetable. Now this is my least favorite song on the album. It's kind of overlooked, and it's kind of easy to overlook. It's an early era, Gabriel era pop song, really, where they just kind of stick to a simple structure, and I guess they're pleasant melodies. It sounds like Genesis. It's got I guess their sound was certainly intact at that point. But as a song, it's just kind of, it's just there. I actually don't really like that da 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 da. That part is just, it's a nice melody, but it's so slow and sleepy. I'm not going to be negative. We move on to Get 'Em Out by Friday. That's the third song on the album. This is definitely an early classic. There's a really good version of it on Genesis Live, which came out after this album. Really, really good version, in fact. And it's got the funny story about real estate firm that well, there's a lot of details to it, but the gist of it, they want to eventually move all these people out of this flat building and cut all the floors in half, and then genetically engineer humans to be half the size they were so they can fit twice as many. It's very silly, but it's really cool. I love the passage of time bit in the middle where it starts out in the present, and then there's this kind of really slow winding section, bum 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 bum, bit of flute stuff going on in there, and that represents the passage of time, and then it goes into the future where you have people in a pub, and you hear this big announcement. Again, Gabriel's theatrics were really on form at this point, and message from genetic control business. That's just so funny. I like it better. I like it better in the live album because his accent is just so much more outrageous. This is what I sad duty to inform you of a 4-foot restriction. It's just so great, and it's so English, and I like it. I like it a lot. We move on to the final song of the first side, Can Utility and the Coastliners, a song about King Canute. Something about him, proving to his people that he couldn't control the sea, and then he gets swept up by the tide or something. I should know the story a bit more, but I really, really like the song, and it's that typical early Genesis thing, kind of like Stagnation, kind of like the Musical Box, where they wouldn't repeat any sections. It's just, here's an intro, we're going to chill on this, we're going to chill on this bit for a bit, then we're going to move to this bit. And it's really good. It starts out with the kind of classic 12-string guitar arpeggio stuff, nice and folky, again, very English. And when it transforms into this kind of heavier rocking bit, it's maybe a little bit fusiony, but it picks up and you get the that's one of the highlights on the album. I mean, if it wasn't for Supper's Ready, then Can Utility and the Coastliners, I think, would be far and away the best song on the album. I think the only reason that it's overlooked is because it's on the same album as Supper's Ready. But I think it's wonderful. I really like Can Utility and the Coastliners. It's kind of got a fun, uplifting, bouncy, silly ending, which is it's a classic early Genesis song. There's a crazy bass part in it. There's a few things. There's a couple of chords. There's a weird timing bit at the end where they add the extra note. Doom do 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 doom 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 doom. I can't think of the part right offhand, but I look forward to it every time I hear the song. Moving on, we flip the album, we flip the vinyl, and we get track 1 of 2 tracks on side 2. Just a short little Steve Hackett instrumental. They gave him a little piece on the album, probably to keep him satisfied. I feel he was probably had the most difficulty getting his ideas through to the band in that kind of songwriter democracy. You kind of get that idea anyway. Although he definitely had some of his moments, and I guess For Absent Friends is kind of his debut. But this is Horizons, I think, is Steve Hackett's first real Steve Hackett moment in Genesis, where he contributed something kind of seminal. It's a great little song, a little classical kind of a thing. And it serves as a great intro to Supper's Ready, which, I mean, you really can't, it's hard to talk about it because, like I said, it is, not only is it kind of the peak of Genesis in a lot of ways, it is also, an absolute seminal moment in that period, that progressive rock era. It is an absolutely essential moment, absolutely crucial moment, and it's a very famous moment. A moment of 24 minutes or so. And yeah, I think I mentioned before, Plague of Lighthouse Keepers by Vandergraaf Generator had come out before, and Procol Harum, I think, there's the Deeper Shade of Pale, I think. Whiter Shade of Pale, that's the other really long one. I should familiarize myself with those. I'm going to listen to those, and I'm going to give them kind of relatively fresh reviews. I mean, I'm reviewing stuff that I know a lot about already, but I need to do stuff that I haven't heard. But anyway, I think Supper's Ready is the seminal sidelong epic of the era, because it's not, it's less like a Close to the Edge or some of the stuff that's on Tales of Topographic Oceans by Yes, where it's less just here's a section, here's a section, here's a section, here's a whole lot of crazy playing. It is all a song, and there are melodic repeats, and there's a lot of it's harmonically and melodically very much linked together. I mean, it is. I mean, on the vinyl, it's all separated into separate songs, but they are connected, and it is one excellent piece of music. It's kind of like the classic Genesis stuff where it's here's this it doesn't really repeat, although like I said it does repeat. It repeats, it doesn't just repeat a whole section exactly as it was. I mean, you'll hear a melody that'll repeat within a different section of the song, but it has that early Genesis kind of slow build up feel, which I think is great. It starts out with the 12-string stuff, and it's been a long time, hasn't it, bit at the end of the Lover's Leap section. That is magical. That is a classic Genesis moment. It is a wonderful Genesis moment. I love that section. And then, of course, Willow Farm in the middle, which comes after How Dare I Be So Beautiful, was the section before it, where it's just the sound of a piano, but without like the actual striking of the piano. You just hear the resonance fade in, and that Social Security took care of this lad and has been stamped human bacon, and those weird kind of cryptic lines. I really love that section, which leads into Willow Farm, which is a zany, crazy section. Again, a classic moment where the costumes, where Gabriel would put the flower on, the flower costume on, and do his crazy dance around the stage. And great, fantastic drumming in that section too. And then the song kind of winds back down again, and then you get the big, long, epic Apocalypse in 9/8 section, which I think is it's a timeless staple of classic 70s prog. You know, I'm not sure if it's better then, but I mean, if there was like a holy trinity of moments, I mean, Lark's Tongues and Aspic is certainly a moment. Apocalypse in 9/8 is certainly a moment, and I'm biased, but I would say Plague of Lighthouse Keepers by Vandergraaf Generator is a moment. Those are all moments in that progressive era that I think are seminal. But the Apocalypse in 9/8, that riff is so great. Dun 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 dun. It's such a great riff. And then Collins is kind of playing a 4/4 thing. Obviously, there's the famous keyboard solo by Tony Banks where he is playing in 4/4. But the way that the 4/4 bounces off the 9/8 is just, it's so good. I mean, and you can listen to it intellectually and notice how these timings are all different, but at the same time, the way that it all works, it's got that emotional hit too, and it really, that climax is wonderful. And some of my favorite Phil Collins drumming is in Apocalypse 9/8 too. There's just some killer moments of just drum awesomeness. And then, of course, it all builds up, and then you get the real big emotional, return, and you get there's a whole lot of melodies that repeat at the end with the As Sure as Eggs section. Kind of repeats the Lover's Leap for a little bit, then it goes into Guaranteed Eternal Sanctuary Man. And, of course, obviously in Apocalypse 9/8, he wore the Magog costume, the Pythagoras costume, which breaks apart, and he comes out and he's all white at the end of the song, and it's the emotional climax, and it's really, really good. And it's again, it's hard to talk about. It's just so perfect. It's one of those moments in music history that is just so good. There's some more. Yeah, there's more. There's the section of Lover's Leap. The 6 saintly shrouded men move across the lawn slowly. Except that's a beach. It's kind of the album cover is kind of linked. But yeah, Foxtrot, definitely in a very important moment. It's not my favorite Genesis album, like I said, but it has the moment. It has the absolute Genesis moment, I think. But I still think there's better things to come. So stay tuned next time for Selling England by the Pound. See you later.